Welcome back to Explaining Everything, the channel where we dive into the weird and wonderful history behind everyday things. Today's question comes from one of our saucy viewers, Knight in Jeffrey. Thanks for the suggestion, Jeffrey. You asked, how did medieval people flirt before texting? Let's be real. Before sliding into DMs, people had to do a lot more work to get a date. No "what you doing" texts, no heart eye emojis, no disappearing Snapchats, just pure, awkward, old-fashioned romance. So, how did people in medieval times let their crush know they were interested? Were there secret signals? Weird love letters? Dramatic poetry? Oh, you bet! Stick around because you're about to learn how flirting worked when courtship involved actual courts. Right here on Explaining Everything. First things first, medieval romance wasn't as simple as locking eyes across a candlelit tavern. Depending on your social class, love could be a political strategy, a lifelong commitment, or an elaborate game of "I like you, but I can't say it outright because my dad already promised me to Lord Borrington of Nowheresville." For nobles, flirting was like chess, strategic, dramatic, and full of rules. For peasants, a bit more straightforward, but still full of awkward moments. Since texting wasn't an option, people had to rely on body language, gestures, and coded messages. Here are some classic medieval flirting techniques. First, the handkerchief drops. A noblewoman might accidentally drop her handkerchief in front of a knight she fancied. If he picked it up and kept it, that was basically a medieval "he left me on red" situation. Second, the extended eye contact. Locking eyes across a feast hall? Scandalous. Holding it for more than 3 seconds. Practically an engagement. Third, the sleeve tugging. In some cultures, if a woman gently tugged at a man's sleeve, it meant she liked him. If she yanked it off entirely, well, she really liked him. Without texting, the written word was king. But medieval love letters weren't like, "Hey, thinking of you." Oh no, these were dramatic. Knights, troubadours, and hopeless romantics wrote letters filled with poetic suffering. "My heart, trapped as a falcon in thy gaze, doth yearn for thee as the river seeks the sea. If thou dost not return my affections, I shall surely perish." Translation: Hey, I like you. Do you like me back? And if you were really serious, you might seal it with wax, maybe even a secret symbol. No emojis, just pure wax-stamped commitment. If medieval dating had influences, it was the troubadours, wandering poets and musicians who basically invented the idea of serenading your crush. Imagine this. You're chilling in your castle, minding your own business, when a guy in tights shows up beneath your balcony with a lute and starts singing about your beauty. Today, that's a little weird. Back then, peak romance. Troubadours wrote about courtly love, an intense, often hopeless, devotion to a noblewoman. Most of the time, these romances never went anywhere, but they inspired generations of angsty love poetry. Basically, medieval Tumblr. Sometimes, flirting wasn't just words, it was full contact. Enter the joust. Knights would dedicate their battles to a lady, sometimes wearing her favor, a scarf, ribbon, or handkerchief tied to their armor. Winning a joust for a lady's honor was the equivalent of flexing on Instagram, just with more bruises. Of course, the downside? If you lost, you got thrown off a horse in front of everyone. Not exactly smooth. No online shopping? No problem. Medieval lovebirds exchanged tokens of affection, but instead of chocolates and flowers, it was stuff like rings and brooches, because jewelry equals love. Locks of hair. Nothing says romance like gifting someone a piece of your actual head. Handmade embroidered cloths. The effort was impressive, but imagine spending weeks sewing only to get ghosted. And if you were really serious, you might give your beloved a live falcon. Yes, really. A bird of prey was a high-status gift, and nothing says I love you like a trained hunting companion. Medieval feasts weren't just for eating. They were matchmaking central. Dancing was a prime flirting opportunity, full of subtle glances, light touches, and whispered conversations. But don't get too excited. These dances were highly structured. You couldn't just break into the medieval version of a TikTok trend. There were rules, and breaking them could mean scandal. Still, if you managed to sneak in a meaningful touch, that was basically a medieval super-like. If subtle flirting and bad poetry didn't work, medieval people got creative. Enter love spells and potions. Some people believed eating certain foods could make someone fall for you. Spoiler, they were wrong. Others carried charms or whispered spells in hopes of catching someone's eye. And if all else failed, a witch could hook you up with a potion. Probably risky, but hey, medieval dating was tough. So, how did medieval people flirt without texting? With a lot of effort, questionable poetry, and occasional horse-related injuries. Whether it was a well-placed glance, a dramatic serenade, or a handkerchief drop, love in the Middle Ages was nothing if not extra. And honestly, maybe we could learn something from them. Next time you text your crush, "What you doin'?" maybe try sending them a poem instead. Just maybe skip the falcon. If you enjoyed today's video or finally mustered up the courage to talk to your crush, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for tuning in, and join us next time here in the channel that answers all the why, what, who, where, and how questions you've always wondered about, here on Explaining Everything.